Hey guys, it's Christian, local Vancouver Realtor, and for today's video, I want to talk to you about the province's big announcement, the big news, which is the removal of rental restrictions on all stratas in BC, which could affect up to 300,000 units from what we are reading online. Now, this new policy affects people differently. There are winners and there are losers. Let's start with the loser. Who loses here? The big group is first-time buyers and low-budget buyers. As when I'm working with clients, especially first-time buyers, one of the big benefits we had were looking at stratas with rental restrictions. And the advantage was we knew we did not need to compete with hordes of other buyers, especially deep-pocketed investors, because those units mean nothing to investors because they can't rent it out, so they avoided it. So it was nice. We didn't have that competition. It was just maybe us against another couple, or my clients and a few other couples. But that was the big advantage. And the second one was that those units tend to sell for a little bit less. I would say maybe about 5% or so. So if you had a $650,000 condo with no rentals, with rentals allowed, and then you have one next door that's the same in every way, it would probably be about $30,000, $35,000 cheaper. So that was another bonus. Well, that's gone now. So this policy, this is a body blow to first-time buyers and low-budget buyers, I would say. Who's the winner? Owners. Owners are big winners here. This is fantastic. This is a hallelujah moment for a couple of reasons. One, you're not forced to sell your unit now. So, I've seen it in the past where, mom and dad owned a unit, and the reason why they're selling is because their daughter graduated from university, and the strata had a restriction on rentals, not allowed to, and so they would just sell the unit. And maybe, a buyer would buy and then move in themselves. But the point was they couldn't hold on to the unit. And, the whole goal with real estate over the long run is to build your real estate empire. As you get older, over the decades, you want to be adding homes, right? Hopefully you can go from one to a rental property after your principal residence. Maybe you can add another one after that. You don't want to have to be forced to sell. So that's a win. Second win for owners, I mentioned it earlier in the video, is there's going to be a slight lift in the value of units because now there's a bigger pool of buyers to sell to, right? In the past, if you had rental restrictions, and I've seen buildings that say one rental allowed. I've seen buildings that say no rentals allowed, period. And that handcuffs you as an owner. Obviously, you have to find someone who's moving in or you're not selling it. So there's going to be a lift, I would say about 5%. Like I told you, if it was a $600,000 condo, I think you'd start to see a lift of about to $620,000 or $630,000 because there's more buyers for your home now, which is good news. Now, who's the other winner here? Tenants. This is great news if you're a tenant, if you're a renter out there, because now you've got more options to choose from. According to the new premier, there's going to be 2,900 units in BC where the owners applied to the province for an exemption from the empty homes tax, because the province's version of that, called the spec tax, says you can't leave your home empty. But if you owned in a strata that says you can't rent it out and you're leaving, well, now you're stuck between the two. And so you applied for an exemption. So those 2,900 people can now go ahead and rent out their units and not be forced to leave them empty. But I don't think that's still just a drop in the bucket. A couple of notes on that. Most of these options are in highly desirable areas, so that's a big win for tenants. We have Kitsilano and West End. Most of those stratas were built in the 1970s and the 1980s, and they pretty much all have rental restrictions because the people that live in them are much older, and they don't want their building turning into a party building. That's why they put in those restrictions on rentals. They're worried about tenants, moving in and having parties and making a lot of noise, and so on. And so that is, but that's going to now disappear. Those obviously tenants will have lots of places, more options to choose from. But I don't think it'll make a big difference in prices because, as I mentioned, the 2,900 units, that's very small when you look at the number of people that are moving to BC every year. Last year, over 100,000 people moved to British Columbia. So that's 3%. Really, it's not going to make a big difference there. So that's the news anyway. Those are the winners and losers. If you're thinking about buying or selling, you've got my phone number below. Give us a call, and we'll see you next week.